There we go. I am here today to talk to you about cortisol lowering habits. This is a really important conversation because one of the biggest blockers to shifting the fat, particularly the belly fat, which is the bit that most of us are particularly bothered about, one of the biggest blockers to shifting that is elevated cortisol. Cortisol is your stress hormone, or one of your stress hormones. We have many, and cortisol is the one that we talk about a lot because cortisol is the one that can become chronically elevated, which means that you just spend too much time with cortisol being elevated. And there are times during the day where cortisol should be elevated, and there are times when it should be lower, but it needs to be within a certain range, and we don't want it staying elevated, and equally we don't want it staying really low either. Those fluctuations are what get us through the day. When cortisol elevates in the morning, it wakes us up, and when it comes down in the evening, it helps us to unwind and prepare to go to sleep. And so when there's any issues in either that elevation in the morning or that decrease in the afternoon, then we start getting issues with our energy and our sleep. But also we can get issues with the stubborn belly fat. And it could be quite a subtle elevation in cortisol, one that maybe doesn't impact your energy levels or your sleep, but perhaps is enough to cause an increase in your blood sugars, just a very marginal one, that might keep you in fat storing mode rather than fat burning mode. So cortisol is something we want to talk about for that reason. And a lot of people's initial response to talking about cortisol is, oh, I don't think I'm stressed, so I don't think this really applies to me. It must be something else that's causing my belly fat. And that is, of course, very possible. However, the women that we work with in the Nourish method, they really fall into the age range of 35 to 55 usually. And we work with that specific age range because that is the time when your hormones are starting to change. So from about the age of 35, your sex hormones are starting to decline gradually. They can be up and down all over the place, but overall they're starting to decline as you approach menopause, which is usually around about the age of 50, 51, but can be much earlier, can be much later. And when you are going through that transition, the transition that's actually happening is your ovaries, which used to produce your sex hormones, they're starting to wind down, they're starting to shut down as they run out of eggs. And when that happens, your stress glands, which are your adrenals, they start taking over the production of some of these sex hormones. So what this means is that really the closer you get to menopause, the more your adrenal glands are doing the bulk of the work with producing your sex hormones. So what this can mean is that you become quite sensitive to any sort of stressors. It can be that any stressor, which could be emotional, it could be psychological, it could be physical. So it could be financial worries, it could be bereavements, it could be more physical, which might be experiencing pain. It could be undereating, over-exercising, or experiencing extreme temperatures. So stress is not just the obvious stress that we all know and recognize. It can be much more physical. So those sorts of stresses, we become much more sensitive to them and much less resilient to them, because your stress glands, they're not only having to produce your stress hormones, which help you to have the right energy so that you can respond appropriately to these stresses, but they're also having to produce your sex hormones. And for your body, it's so much more important that you can respond to stress and danger than it is to be able to produce these sex hormones, which are ultimately there to help you reproduce. And that's true whatever age you are, but particularly around the time of menopause and afterwards. So when there's any sort of elevation in cortisol, there's you're much more likely to struggle with stubborn belly fat for two key reasons. One is because elevated cortisol, it increases your blood sugars, which keeps you in fat storage mode, but also because your body prioritizes those hormones over the sex hormones, your estrogen level can be greatly decreased. It decreases anyway when you're going through this transition, but it can be, decreased even more than usual, which can really cause stubborn weight and a lot of these symptoms that we associate with menopause. So this is why this is so important. And if you are finding that no matter how much exercise you do, no matter how well you eat or how much you cut back, you just can't shift the weight, be it weight anywhere on your body or the belly fat, then there's a very good chance that there's something more going on. And what I talk about all the time is how there's all these different factors, things like your gut bacteria and deficiencies, intolerances, your hormone balance, of course, and your stress levels are really one of the big pieces of the puzzle. So this is definitely an area to prioritize. And on that note, I want to talk you through some key habits that are really going to help you to start lowering your cortisol if you do them fairly consistently. So as with anything, consistency is key. You don't have good, healthy teeth because you once brushed your teeth. You brush your teeth twice a day to keep your teeth healthy. So it's the same with anything, particularly when it comes to managing cortisol levels, managing stress. We need to do things consistently, not just when there is a problem, but also when things are good, to prevent problems as well. So these are the things that you really want to be thinking about incorporating into your everyday life. And I would recommend just starting with one thing and then building on it gradually. And with any habit, be it a lifestyle habit or be it a food habit, we build habits. The best way to build in a new habit is to stack it. You want to stack it on something else. So it might be that you do the same thing every day at the same time. For example, brushing your teeth. That's a good example, I think. Or it might be making a cup of tea that you do regularly, day in, day out, almost without fail. A good idea is to build a habit on the back of that or on the front of that to help you do it consistently. So think about that when you're trying to add new habits in, and crucially, just add one thing at a time, because the chances are you're probably not going to manage to do it consistently if you try to do too much at once. So let's get into it. Let's talk about these habits to help you lower your cortisol levels. So the first thing, and by the way, this is just a couple of things that I do. There is so many things that you could do to help reduce cortisol, but I'd be here all day talking about it. But hopefully some of these things might inspire other things that you could do that might work for you individually to help bring down the cortisol. So one thing is to take a little bit of time each evening, and I'm talking maybe 1 minute, to just get things ready for the day before. And when you're struggling with your weight, one of the big stresses each morning can be finding something to wear that you feel comfortable in, that you feel good in. So what you could do is just choose an outfit the night before, so that when you get up in the morning, you've just got to throw it on. It saves you a bit of time, it saves you a bit of stress, and it's one less decision you have to make first thing in the morning when your cortisol levels are increasing anyway, because that's just naturally what happens. We don't want to exacerbate that anymore first thing in the morning. So it might be choosing outfit. It might be that you throw a couple of ingredients in a bowl so that you've got a breakfast almost ready to go first thing. again, just to make your morning easier. A couple of things that are exercise related. So many of the women that we work with are doing, quite a lot of exercise. They're often quite intense exercise, really, punishing their bodies. And it's not always the best approach to take to lose weight when your body has this poor resilience to cortisol, because, we've already spoken about how your cortisol levels might be a little bit higher because of this lowered resilience during this time. But when anyone exercises, your cortisol level increases. It's just the natural thing that happens. It helps with muscle repair. But we really want to bring that cortisol level down again afterwards. And for some people, the really intense exercise can really raise their cortisol level, and they can have trouble bringing it down again. So there are a couple of considerations to help really limit the impact of that elevation of cortisol with workouts. So one thing is to kind of ease yourself in gently to exercise. And I'm not just talking about if you're just getting started with exercise. I mean, with every workout that you do, we want to just build up gently. And, we all know about warm-ups, and I think a lot of people skip them. This is not just about warming up your muscles. It's also about warming up your brain and, just kind of letting your body know that you're going to be getting active rather than just blasting into it. So it can be a really good idea just to have a short walk before you launch into an intense workout, or maybe do a bit of stretching before you launch into it. That just helps to ease your body into your exercise. And equally, when you finish working out, we really want to warm down as well. And this is even more important, much like a warm-up. And I think more so people don't tend to warm down so much. Again, warming down is very important for your muscles. It helps to kind of clear the lactic acid buildup. But more importantly, it helps to really bring that cortisol level down again. So with a warm down, a lot of people will maybe just walk on the treadmill or cycle slowly. But we want to make sure that we're incorporating some stretching, perhaps go a little bit further than the average stretches that happen after a workout, and get a little bit more into, a few minutes of yoga. And with that, some deep breathing will really help just lower your cortisol level after exercise. And a good idea can be, if you're heading from the gym to home in the car after a workout, or whatever you're doing after your workout, it can be a good idea to put on some chill out music just to help bring you back down after it. This is particularly if you're doing an intense workout. And while we're on the subject of deep breathing, there is so much research on belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing, where you just spend a little bit of time, it might be 30 seconds, it could be a couple of minutes, where you just do some really controlled, slow, deep breaths into your belly, and just stopping and trying to still your mind for a few minutes. And for some people, meditation would be what they call that, and they might spend a few minutes meditating. For others, it's just deep breathing. They're much of a muchness, really. It's about just stopping and breathing into your belly. To what that does is it helps to stimulate the vagus nerve, which is a huge nerve that runs from your brain all the way down through your gut. And when we stimulate that vagus nerve, it puts us into what's called the parasympathetic mode, or it stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system. And as women, we're always go, go, go. We're working, we're running errands, we're cleaning, and so many of the women that I work with, they never really truly stop, and so many really struggle to relax. And if that's you, then you are almost certainly spending all of your time in the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight, your go, go, go nervous system. And the opposite is the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest. And when we're in parasympathetic mode, that's when we're repairing, that's when we're healing. And your body is really going to struggle to burn fat when you're in sympathetic mode. So we need to be taking ourselves into that parasympathetic mode each day intentionally, and just taking a minute to do some deep breathing, and like I was talking about earlier, some stretching after your workouts helps you get back into that parasympathetic mode after your workouts. And a good time of day to do a little bit of deep breathing is any time of day, any time that you can find a few minutes, but particularly lunchtime, because in the morning our cortisol levels naturally raise, and then they start gradually declining over the course of the day. So about lunchtime, we want to make sure that our cortisol levels are heading in the right direction. So it's a really great time to try and turn it around and get the cortisol to start heading downwards again. One more thing to think about, actually two more things. One more is to not go too crazy on the fasting. So fasting is an incredibly effective tool for improving your weight loss results if everything else is in balance. What I find with our ladies is that fasting can really exaggerate the progress you're getting. So if you are not doing so well and you've got imbalances like your blood sugars or your cortisol or your sex hormones, then fasting can sometimes make those things worse, which can be why not everyone gets on very, very well with it and can feel really rubbish with it, can really struggle with it. What we find with our ladies is that we bring in fasting a little bit later, when we've been working on all these other areas of imbalance to get them properly supported. And then when we bring in fasting later, actually it works so much better, and they get on really well with it. It slots in nicely with their lifestyle. And so too much fasting can specifically cause elevations in cortisol, because undereating or starvation can raise cortisol. It can also reduce your thyroid function as well. And so if there's any thyroid issues, we really want to do, not necessarily no fasting, but it might be quite short fasts, 12 to 14 hours. So be very cautious of fasting. You might find that actually it's quite easy for you to do, but if it's not really getting you the results that you were expecting, then just be aware it could be elevating your cortisol, and that might be part of the reason why. And the last thing is to just be conscious of your caffeine intake. Caffeine is a stimulant. It will stimulate the production of cortisol. That's how it works. Cortisol wakes you up and lifts you up by stimulating your cortisol, which makes you more alert. Unfortunately, the trade-off is that it can cause stomach and belly fat, and also you can have a crash in energy levels in the afternoon. After about 4 to 6 hours, the caffeine can start wearing off. So it's fine to have a bit of caffeine. Some people are very sensitive, and I don't just mean, get the shakes. I mean, you might feel fine with it, but it can be very disruptive to hormones, partly because it elevates your cortisol, but also because your body actually detoxes and removes caffeine from your system through the same pathways that we actually eliminate our estrogens. So your body can prioritize the elimination of caffeine in place of the estrogens, meaning that you can almost have a bit of a backlog with your estrogens, which can in itself cause an imbalance. So a bit of a list to work through there, but hopefully this has been helpful. As I say, it's best to just focus on doing one of these things to start with, and then kind of coming back and building things in that make sense and work for you. So I hope it's been helpful. And if you've got any questions, make sure you pop them in the comments below. I can't actually see the video at all, so I can't see any comments, so I'll come back and answer any if there are there. But if you found it helpful, give us a like. It does tell Facebook that it was good and that you enjoyed it, and so it helps Facebook to show it to more people. But I'll be back soon with another topic. Have a good day. Oh, and I forgot to say, tonight we are having our webcast, Stop Dieting and Start Seeing Results. This is a webcast where we're going to be getting more into the hormones, the blood sugars, the willpower and motivation side of things, and talking about how essentially it's not calories that are causing that's causing the stubborn weight for you, and actually there may well be other things going on, like your sex hormones, like your blood sugars, and various other factors that we'll also touch on. And we'll be looking at some case studies as well of women that we've worked with who have got fantastic results, and look at, you know, what they did, what they were struggling with, look at their test results. So that'll be really interesting as well. So that's tonight at 7 p.m. And make sure you save your space. You can do that using the link that I'm going to pop into the comments. If you can't make it, then register anyway, and we'll send you out the recording tomorrow. If you can make it live, then do come live, because we have bonuses that we give away there and then. So I will look forward to seeing you later on tonight. Otherwise, I'll see you soon. Bye.